So, good afternoon. Welcome to the lectures of Apheleia. Today we have Professor Nuno Guimarães da Costa, which is Secretary General of Apheleia, having served in UNESCO's work group for the establishment of most bridges, Sustainability Science Coalition. He is a full professor at Apheleia Business School in the Strategy Department and senior advisor to the Dean on issues related to societal impact. Continuing to present the lecture today, Nuno holds an habilitation from Paris 1 Université Panthéon-Sorbonne in France, a doctorate in organizational psychology, a research master and an MBA from the Nova School of Business and Economics in Portugal. He is particularly interested in transdisciplinary research that addresses concrete complex societal problems. Nuno is associate editor of several journals, among which Business and Society Review, and sits on the editorial board on the National Journal of Education in Ethics. He has been a guest editor of several academic journals, including Business and Society and the Journal of Cleaner Production. He has published in the Journal of Business Ethics, Business and Society, Technological Forecasting and Social Change, Organizational Dynamics, European Management Review, Review de l'Organisation Responsable, and Culture and Organization, among others. He has also published several chapters in management-related books. So, for the public, there is the possibility of asking questions in the chat of YouTube, in the broadcast that we are making, and it's a pleasure to and welcome Nuno, Professor Nuno, when you are ready. The stage is yours.
Okay, thank you, Fernando, and welcome to this talk on transdisciplinary collaborations for sustainable solutions. And let me start exactly by reflecting on what is transdisciplinary, why we need transdisciplinary collaborations, and why is this necessary and not a disciplinary approach to problems. So when we look around and we witness events such as wildfires in Los Angeles, the recurring floods in France, Germany, Pakistan, China, and so many other countries and regions of the world, when we witness the increasing wealth gap between extremely rich and extremely poor people, the multiplication of cases of political extremism, intolerance, wars, when we witness a concerning disregard for our human collective memory and heritage, when we see a general acceptance of troubling notions of truth and reality, well, in fact, we cannot prevent ourselves from thinking of Gary Brewer's famous comment, the world has problems, but universities seem to have departments. So, transdisciplinary collaborations are therefore necessary to address these real-world problems, which systemic nature is explained by a complex web of social, economic, political, and environmental causes. We are in fact in the presence of, as UNESCO called it in 2017, the real wicked problems. That is, multiple dimensional issues comprehending interdependent social, economic, political, and environmental realities, which are experienced and perceived in different forms and to different degrees by different actors, and which solution is not apparent nor definitive. In reality, when facing a wicked problem, tentative solutions addressing one dimension of the problem can have unpredictable effects on some of its other dimensions. And this to the extent that the problem and its variables can change because of the solution, while potentially creating new problems to new stakeholders in other dimensions or realities. And it's exactly because of that we need this transdisciplinary approach. And we need a transdisciplinary approach that combines different sources of knowledge to address different perspectives of the problem. That includes both society and academia, also to give a different vision, to allow for different vision, a more grounded level vision from the society, and also a more distant vision from academia that transgresses disciplinary boundaries in such a way that we can explore parts of the phenomenon that are not captured completely by a disciplinary approach, and also that fits contexts of uncertainty, complexity, as are these that I'm sharing here with you, and that aim at tentative solutions, because as we have seen, direct solutions or definitive solutions are not possible in the context of wicked problems because of the interaction between solutions and problems. When we talk about transdisciplinary collaborations, what are we really talking about? Well, we bring together different types of knowledge and understandings of the world to address these wicked problems. These can be academics from natural sciences, human sciences, humanities, or ground-level community members, activists, representatives of indigenous communities, politicians, engineers. And these collaborations will aim to provide tentative solutions to these problems through high degrees of cross-fertilization, integration, and collaboration among academic and non-academic actors. Transdisciplinary collaboration relates with the creation of this new type of knowledge. This new type of knowledge that will respond to real life situations while providing the keys to be back translated into the original disciplinary discourses. So one of the criticisms raised concerning transdisciplinary collaboration, transdisciplinary research, is that it doesn't address or forgets the disciplinary discourse, but in reality, the research, the act of research is transdisciplinary, but then the results can be back translated to each of the disciplines. But this new type of knowledge requires a permanent balance between the many sources and forms of knowledge that are here involved. So it clearly, by combining these different forms of knowledge, it will open space for new questions, new insights, solutions, at the same time transcending disciplinary boundaries to develop commonly agreed and shared methods, conceptual frameworks, and collaborative processes. But if we think, how does this collaboration evolve? So how can we put in practice such transdisciplinary collaborations? Well, one thing that I can tell is it's not easy. It entails several stages, and I will try to describe, synthesize the process in three main phases. Phase A is where a particular issue is identified as fitting a transdisciplinary approach. So, for instance, the availability or scarcity of water in a given region. So this can be identified as a problem. And this can be seen from a societal perspective and from a scientific perspective. And so in this first stage, the academic and non-academic formulations of the problem will be merged and framed as a single transdisciplinary problem to be addressed by a particular transdisciplinary team. So this is also the stage where the necessary competencies and skills will be identified and the corresponding members of the team will be selected. Now, on stage B, or phase B, corresponds to the knowledge co-creation stage. So this is where the bulk of the process will occur. So academic and non-academic discourses and ontologies supported by adequate epistemologies, and we'll discuss that later on, will be blended and made operational by methodologies capable of addressing the different dimensions of the problem. So here, the scientific discourse and the specific societal discourses of the different areas will be blended together to co-create knowledge referring, for instance, this problem of water scarcity in a given community. This knowledge is then transformed in phase C into a tentative solution to the existing problem, while being reintegrated in the respective discourses and domains of practice. So the outputs of this first iteration of the process have the form of results that are relevant for societal practice, but also results that are relevant for scientific practice. These are then fed back to the corresponding disciplinary discourses, and then they become available for future iterations of the process or for different instances of a transdisciplinary collaboration. So you see here, there's a recursive nature of the process, that what comes out at the end of phase 3 of knowledge reintegration, then this means that each area of the transdisciplinary team, each area corresponding to a different stakeholder, would then be allowed to feed back the knowledge that was created, translated it to their own discourses, so societal discourse, the different stakeholders in the community, but also the different disciplines that were involved. And then they will be able to retrieve that information and then transform it into specific solutions for that, for instance, the problem of water scarcity in a given community, but also for academic discourse, in terms of articles, conferences, and that will then, of course, that feeds back into the knowledge stock of each discipline and will be then used in future iterations of this process. But what I described here in a very succinct way needs, of course, some attention and some care. Specifically, some aspects must be considered in each stage, and that's what we'll see next. So I start with the ontological aspects. So we have different people around the table, from different traditions, from different scientific fields and non-scientific fields. So as I described here, so we have people from natural sciences, people from humanities, indigenous people. And so they have diverse understandings about the world, how the world works, what is there to see in the world. And they have also different languages to describe this world. So basically they are observing the same, if you want, water scarcity problem, but they call it in different ways, and they use different languages to describe the same problem. And the issue here is that each of these players, each of these actors is convinced that his or her perspective is the correct one. And it's normal because they are used to that disciplinary field. And so for them, water scarcity means something and is explained in a certain way, whereas for others will be explained by other phenomena. And so we need to find a way of putting these different elements, different components, and different actors speaking together. And one way of doing this is through the creation of boundary objects. These are ideas, concepts, theories, objects that provide some space of understanding and shared meaning between these different disciplines and mainly between the scientific and non-scientific discourses. So they are, if you want, they are conveyors of meaning and translators between these different worlds, and they become, if you want, integrative objects of cooperation. Let me give you an example. We go back to these water scarcity problem, and let's think about the SDG number 6, to ensure availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation for all. So the notion of clean water scarcity, that it's within one of the principles of this SDG, can work as a boundary object. Because even if the world is seen, as I told you before, is seen from different perspectives. Even if the understanding is different, the language is different, there's a common agreement, if you want, of the notion of clean water. And there is a common agreement on the notion of scarcity. Even if it's using different words to describe that, but we can reach a common agreement. And so this could be the platform. And this will serve as a boundary object and a platform to evolve or to develop, to continue the process. Okay, so it is necessary at this stage to create enough boundary objects that will allow the communication between the different parties, so that the subject of research can be addressed. But there is another dimension, that is the epistemological dimension, if you want. So again, we have different approaches to what constitutes knowledge. So what is the meaning of knowledge, and different notions also concerning how to develop that knowledge. So it's not only what is knowledge, and when we look at the different scientific traditions, we have the more positivistic approach that defines knowledge in a very different way of a less positivistic, more interpretivist approach defines the same type of knowledge. And on top of that, we have all the non-academic partners. And so we have a cacophony, if you want, of voices believing in different things. And so we have to find a way of putting these differences aside and try to find a common ground in terms of understanding of knowledge that will allow for the project to be developed. And so there are three overarching types of knowledge that can reach this level. The first one is systems knowledge. So this refers to the empirical knowledge about the current state of the system, its components and internal dynamics, as well as its context and the corresponding conditions and drivers for interaction with other systems, as well as the predictions about its future behavior. And here this is possible, even if we have different notions of what constitutes knowledge and how to develop knowledge, we can reach an agreement about the system, what the system is, and how to address that system. The second type is target knowledge. This refers to purpose and intentions, and it relates to the reasons justifying the need for changes of practices within the system and between systems, as well as the values and interests of the involved actors. Once again, we have here ground for understanding between the different parties of, okay, what is the teleological purpose of the project, and even if I understand knowledge in different ways, so but what do we want with this project? And finally, we have transformation knowledge, and this concerns the means, the transition between the current and the desired status of the system. It refers to knowledge about how to change the system in order to attain the defined purpose. It has to do with the mechanisms of transformation of the institutional environment towards a commonly defined objective. Here, once again, we can find a common ground about the mechanisms of change, of what needs to be changed. And so we need to find this common ground at level of the system, target, and transformation knowledge if we want to move the project forward. Third dimension has to do with the methodological aspects. Here, in this case, we have to find a common understanding and agreement about different methodological approaches. And here it's also particular because different traditions or different research traditions will bring different approaches to what methods to use and what are considered as valid methods. And we are talking simply of the academic sphere, and when we include the non-academic sphere, and if we include indigenous communities, then we have a plethora of methods that must be respected, and to some extent they must be coalesced. So we have to blend these methods in some fashion in order to address the problem. But some factors, even given the different methods and the coexistence of methods or the creation of hybrid methods, some factors must always be present. One of them is spatial proximity. So face-to-face dialogue, interactive research processes help and are necessary to progress with the project. These coupled with active management, and we must not forget that we have, and we'll see that later about the different power structures here, but in order to advance the project, so we need democratic leadership, facilitation and mentorship, fair allocation of responsibilities amongst the different stakeholders, having conflict resolution mechanisms because they will happen in place. And so these two, spatial proximity and active management, will then facilitate the other two subsequent factors, which are trust, which is necessary. So to create or to allow for credibility of the different stakeholders, recognition of the interdependency between the different actors, but also to lead to frequent and effective communication in the form of updates, information sharing, and shared concepts. So trust and communication are fundamental, and they come from active management and spatial proximity. Fifth element or factor is stakeholder involvement. So it is fundamental to engage stakeholders, all the stakeholders since the beginning. More than that, and we'll see that later on, we need a careful selection of the members, of the representatives of each stakeholder, so that they can bring the necessary skills and competences for the project. A sixth factor is problem identification and structuring, as we saw before. So in terms of the ontology and epistemology and epistemological challenges, we need a clear definition of common goals. We need a clear identification of the right object of study, even if we call it differently, even if we see it from different perspectives, but we have to agree on the topic of the problem. We have to agree what the problem is. And this is, as we saw, the first stage. This is immediately at the first stage of the process, as we saw, that we have to agree, because only then we will be creating the team, and we need to involve the stakeholders at that stage, and we need to identify the correct characteristics of each of the members. And then, of course, we have to standardize methods and data, providing appropriate infrastructure for the data, resources, and data support. So we have seen ontological, epistemological, and methodological dimensions that raise several challenges for the implementation and development of transdisciplinary collaborations. And these challenges, this is what we will are ingrained already in the process and in these dimensions, and that's what we will discuss next. That I would like to start with the ethical challenge. When we want to transform a system, when we have the intention, the purpose of changing a system from a given state to another intended desired state, then we are confronted with ethical challenges. Don't forget that in these types of collaborations, although positivistic discourses concerning the separation between research and the object of research are allowed and can be accommodated within the logic of the project, the overall approach is profoundly interpretivist. So it's profoundly anti or non-positivistic, and therefore is inherently political, in the sense that involves choices and decisions shaped by power relations. As such, transdisciplinary collaborations have an important ethical dimension that must be recognized and dealt with. This ethical dimension emerges from the empowered participation of the different stakeholders who are likely to influence and be influenced by the process while their level of implication and knowledge changes. Because given the dynamic and recursive nature of transdisciplinary research, the diversity of the research teams, their different backgrounds and interests, their multiple perspectives and conceptions of the world, we have to consider the ethical challenges and to search for ethical approval, not only at the outset of the project, but throughout all the process. So we cannot, the complexity is such that if we just define and if we just consider ethical challenges at the beginning, all the evolution of the process, all the interactions that will have the ecological, if you want, dimension of the project will, or the dynamic of the project will trigger new ethical questions. And so considering ethics just at the beginning is clearly not enough. And we have to consider ethics and values explicitly from the beginning throughout the entire process. And this should be explicit and considered, but through ongoing discussion, negotiation amongst the different team members and in relation to each other. This active participation involving all stakeholders in the discussion of the ethical assumptions, the ethical beliefs, if you want, and the implications of the transdisciplinary process, results and outcomes, will increase the level of understanding about the wicked problem, and subsequently the degree of involvement and commitment to the project displayed by the different stakeholders. So this is fundamental to also increase the engagement of the different stakeholders, because as we'll see afterwards, the participation of each concerned stakeholder is fundamental for the success of this kind of collaborations. Now, the second challenge relates to power. Given the multitude of involved stakeholders and the corresponding network of values and interests trying to impose strong normative agendas, so some attention should be devoted to the sources of power and power dynamics in the context of transdisciplinary collaborations. So there are fundamentally two main sources of power. Power emerging from the project context, and these include formal authority, legitimacy, and knowledge, and this is intimately related with the project. And then we have power emerging from the structures and networks of the wider context. And this is more relevant, if you want. And this is more, although more subtle, it's more present in the project. And this form of this source of power is including the relevance of practitioners, their capacity to act and influence the direction of the research process, and also the prominence of the researchers in the academic fields of knowledge. So fundamentally, determining the forms of participation, the what, who, how, does what, is defined by the socio-political context and the existing relationships between science and society. And this is important because research objects are ultimately chosen in accordance with the values seen as relevant at a given instant. And these are defined by the existing power structures and dynamics. A clear example of the importance of this source of power is what we are witnessing right now in the discussions surrounding the different nominations for the Trump administration and the emerging trends concerning research related to climate change or health-related issues. So clearly, since these power structures and networks of the wider context are changing, so are changing the focus of research and the political attention that is given to each area of research. Concerning power dynamics, these can be expressed at three levels. The first level is instrumental power, and this refers to the capacity of an agent to direct an action towards an intended objective. So this is basically the simplest definition of power. Then we have structural power, and this refers to the structural material conditions defining the available options and behaviors of the actor, including, and this is important, the possibility of inclusion or exclusion from the process. And then we have a much subtle form of power that is the discursive power. This refers to the power of influencing an agenda by imposing forms of discourse that are encapsulated, that are hidden into values, norms, and ideas. So if we look at transdisciplinary collaborations, what we find is that researchers in general have high instrumental power to define who participates in the process, what has to be done, and how it should be done. However, funding bodies have important structural and discursive power when they define the overall research purposes, when they impose conditions for participation, and they define the amount of funding per type of stakeholder. But practitioners also have an important discursive power, depending on their position in the existing power structures and networks. So the three players in this transdisciplinary collaboration have different types of power, and these power dynamics will define the direction of the project and also the success, the eventual success of the transdisciplinary collaboration. Now, looking at organizational support, basically we have two types of conflicts or problems related to organizational support: inter-organizational support and intra-organizational support. So concerning inter-organizational conflicts, which would be the expected ones given the diversity of stakeholders and backgrounds. So these emerge from different needs and expectations concerning the project, its results and its outcomes, the political position of each organization related to the project, but also to the scope and field of intervention. Moreover, one would also expect challenges emerging from different organizational cultures, values, structures, processes, because each organization is trying to hold to its way of doing things, to their perspective of normalcy, which is expected, because each organization, each stakeholder will watch and look at reality as if it is normal, it's reality. Okay. However, but this is what we would have expected. However, we have also some sources of intra-organizational conflict. And these are less intuitive, less expected, but nonetheless are at least equally important. And these emerge from time balance issues, with participants to the transdisciplinary collaboration having to juggle between traditional projects and transdisciplinary ones, between their habitual tasks and the obligations emerging from the transdisciplinary collaboration, because very often these transdisciplinary collaborations are just accessory to the main activity of the organization to which they are attached. And so they are generally marginal and they are then at the side. But these inter-organizational conflicts also emerge from the lack of recognition from the corresponding organizational structures and processes. For non-academic participants, conflict can emerge in the form of political barriers opposing policy changes or results implementation. So as I told you, these are most often are peripheric projects that then will try to implement general policies. And so they will be faced with political barriers against those policy changes. For academic participants, well, it emerges in the form of reward systems fitted to discipline-based research, coupled with difficulty of contributing to disciplinary, theoretical, and conceptual advancements. A good example of this last problem or form of conflict or challenge is the recent push for transdisciplinary collaborations from certain research institutes, universities, research centers, which is not accompanied by the corresponding change of the reward systems, because these are simply anchored in the external evaluations or rankings that are fundamentally disciplinary. So we have here kind of a schizophrenic relationship that these research centers are pushing researchers towards transdisciplinary research, but at the same time, the evaluation systems and the reward systems are fundamentally disciplinary. To conclude the challenges related to organizational support, so transdisciplinary projects find themselves in fierce competition with disciplinary ones for funding, which also increases the pressure to present results and implement outcomes, which is in clear opposition to the very nature of the transdisciplinary research, which requires time, requires some type of moderation, but essentially requires time and conflicting results. Now, addressing the process in itself, so challenges emerging from transdisciplinary process. Well, the problem is that they very often occur simultaneously, given the recursive nature of the process. So we have a multitude of challenges happening at the same time, while its consequences spread across the whole process and into its potential subsequent cycles. So if we look at phase A, we have challenges concerning teams, building a team. The challenge consists of selecting the correct team members from representative stakeholders, including academic and non-academic partners. If we look at the challenges associated with problem identification, then we have that due to the diversity of scientific and non-scientific backgrounds and perspectives, and the initial difficulty in articulating a shared discourse, it is possible to have multiple formulations concerning the problem, including assumptions about its causes and manifestations, its potential developments, what the aspects are that need to be addressed and changed. At the same time, these multitude of viewpoints extends to beliefs and knowledge concerning the type of technical, social, political, legal, or cultural tools that should be used and how. So this is where we should enter with the boundary objects, and the boundary objects would be the solution. Looking at agenda setting, setting the appropriate agenda, which carefully represents the interests and values of all the stakeholders, can prove to be a challenge due to the complex power structures and dynamics of these transdisciplinary projects. Because basically, we are requiring from the more powerful stakeholders the paradoxical effort of circumventing existing power structures in order to assure equal participation in the process. So we are asking the powerful stakeholders to let go of their power to allow for a more democratic process. Entering the phase B, so the challenges concerning collaboration on the phase of knowledge co-creation. So the main challenge is to overcome the barriers associated with participants' diversity, including those due to their organizational affiliation and divergent research cultures with their epistemological and methodological differences, as we saw. So to facilitate collaboration, several issues must be addressed, and these include agreeing on the relevance of experiential knowledge, the need of transcending academic disciplines, overcoming the disciplinary culture difference in norms and values in academic and non-academic contexts, as well as contrasting priorities, expectations, or perspectives among participating partners. If we look at the knowledge co-creation, the level and the extent of actors' participation in a transdisciplinary project should be closely connected with the problem being addressed. And why? Because pronounced inequalities in participation are likely to result in ignoring values, interests, perspectives, as well as excluding relevant knowledge about the problem. This is why I told you before that including all the stakeholders and giving them access to the research is fundamental, because we don't want to let parts of the problem outside of the scope of the project. Moreover, participants that are relegated to inferior levels of participation will display equally reduced levels of engagement and responsibility towards the project. The challenges associated with the mechanisms of knowledge co-creation largely stem from existing power structures and the corresponding organizational support dedicated to the transdisciplinary collaboration. So in addition to these, the epistemological and methodological differences requires participants to engage in extensive efforts to understand different methods, approaches, and types of knowledge, while accepting at the same time the limits of their own, which can be challenging and highly complicated. Now, if we look at knowledge integration, again, the diversity of stakeholders representing different political, economic, societal interests implies the coexistence of several communicative styles and use of disciplinary jargon. So the challenge is thus the creation of a new integrative methodology that combines the different languages, methodologies, and epistemologies that are present in any transdisciplinary collaboration. If we look at phase C, generalization and transferability, the first challenge is how to expand and transfer knowledge acquired on a specific case to other practical cases, as well as to different bodies of academic disciplinary knowledge. A second challenge is to understand to what extent is transformative knowledge embedded in both target and systems knowledge. Specifically, the extent of knowledge transferability between different instances of the same problem. For instance, knowledge, how can knowledge acquired during a transdisciplinary collaboration concerning migration in Bolivia be applied to the same problem in another region of the world? But as well as the extent of knowledge transferability between instances of different problems. And here is more difficult still. It's knowledge that is acquired during the same migration project in Bolivia being applied to a different problem of, for instance, water scarcity in the Sahara region. So this transferability of knowledge is fundamental for the success of the transdisciplinary collaborations. In terms of assessment and evaluation, these mainly concerns measuring the impact and the contribution to both practice and academia, and practitioners and academics often have to have different perspectives about what constitutes relevant and valuable knowledge. And it is thus necessary to agree in these common quality assessment and evaluation measures in order to validate the transformative power of the outcomes and allow the usability and dissemination of results. So after all these challenges, after all these dimensions, after all these complications, the question that we can ask is it possible to have successful collaborations? Can we have indeed, should we engage in these transdisciplinary collaborations? Well, successful collaborations are those that are problem-driven and solutions-focused collaborative research projects. Outcomes, so successful collaborations are those whose outcomes are relevant to social practice and reliable in scientific terms. And successful collaborations also leads to mutual learning between practitioners and academics, as well as among scientists from different disciplines in the process of problem definition, analysis, and problem solving. So the stakeholders' collaborations across roles and positions become opportunities for fruitful sharing and discussion of the different ideas, values, assumptions, methods, and epistemologies involved in the process. Learning in successful collaborations, learning occurs when new competencies are created and new capacities are built among actors, which extend beyond the practical problem that is being researched to address new situations occurring in the wider social units or communities of practice. So we go back to the question of migration in Bolivia being important for water scarcity in the Sahara region. So I would like to close by referring to a project that we at Apheleia Business School, we are developing a transdisciplinary project that it's called the Blue Education Experience. So in this case, in my school, we launched an initiative that brings together academics from management, but also from other social sciences, humanities, natural sciences, from other schools and universities. And we work closely together with local authorities, ONGs, and companies to address specific problems related to SDG 6 and SDG 14. So water scarcity and water availability, sanitation, and also the life below water. So clearly managing these initiatives is not easy due to the different languages, understandings, conceptions of the world that exist. Also the different expectations and timescales, as well as objectives, so including pedagogical, scientific, social, business related, are complicated to manage. But we have been able to come up with tentative solutions for real problems that are then back translated into concrete pedagogical offers, research papers, ground level initiatives, local and regional legislative initiatives, and even business opportunities. And with this example of the importance and the value of transdisciplinary collaboration, so I finish my presentation and I have to thank you, and I'm open for further questions if you have it. Thank you.
Bye-bye.